Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. Today, the committee will receive a briefing on the Climate Action Plan. As we deal with the economic and public health crisis created by COVID-19, we can't forget about the climate crisis. We were facing it long before the pandemic, and we'll continue to face it long after the pandemic has ended. So we want to keep our professional staff moving ahead and taking action as quickly as possible. I really want to thank the technical working groups and DEP and ACAO Hochberg and all the stakeholders that have contributed to this really remarkable document and this process. It's taken a long time. It's not common that we receive 850 policy recommendations on any individual issue, but the climate deserves it. So after reviewing the Climate Action Plan, it's really clear that we have great talent in the county. The plan is a reflection of our strong commitment to reducing our carbon emissions by 100% by 2035 and meeting our other goals. I really look forward to hearing more about the latest iteration of the plan, and I will want to welcome all of our guests that have joined us today and turn it over to Mr. Levchenko after I call on my colleagues to see if they have any opening remarks. I do want to say we're still, of course, in the middle of a pandemic and a historic recession, so we're going to try and keep this to an hour. I know my colleagues have reviewed the packet in depth already, and we're going to try and quickly go through it and get to their questions. Colleagues, do you have any opening remarks before we turn it to Mr. Levchenko?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think you framed the conversation beautifully, that we're dealing with a number of pandemics here. And as you can see, or as we all know, in other parts of the country, energy consumption and usage has created a wholly different problem. And we want to make sure that we here in Montgomery County and the DC region are putting our best foot forward to preserve the climate, because otherwise we got nothing else. So I look forward to this conversation.
Yep, well said. Councilmember Reamer, are we good? Should we move on? Okay, you can jump in whenever you want. Mr. Levchenko.
Right, okay. As you mentioned, Chair Hucker, this report that we have before us today does represent a culmination of a couple years of work and a cast of hundreds, maybe not thousands, but hundreds of people that have contributed to this. And today we have a lot of staff from county government here, ranging from Ms. Hochberg, the Assistant CAO, who's the overall leader of this effort, but also we have our DEP folks here, and also our emergency management staff. They were a significant contributor to several elements of the plan. And then also we have consultants that worked on finalizing the plan after it went through the technical work group process. So they're here as well. They can speak directly to questions that folks may have on individual elements of the plan. The packet itself has the presentation slides that Ms. Hochberg will lead us through. And as you mentioned, they can do it in an expedited manner to help us get to the questions. The plan itself is linked in the packet in case people want to bring that up. But it's a couple hundred pages, and that's not even including the appendices. So be warned, it may be hard to find something in that quickly, but we'll do our best. But the slides are included in the packet, and Ms. Hochberg will share the screen so that they can come up so we can follow along on the screen. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hochberg, or perhaps any other executive officials that want to introduce the matter.
Good afternoon, Council President Hucker and members of the Transportation and Environment Committee. I'm pleased to appear before the TNE Committee along with members of the county's climate team and the technical consultants to provide an overview of the draft Climate Action Plan. I'll be co-presenting this afternoon a streamlined presentation with Doug Weisberger and Sam Edwards from the Department of Environmental Protection. And as Keith mentioned, there are many other members of our team, as well as the technical consultants here with us this afternoon, and they can also help to answer questions. I do want to take a moment to express how proud I am of the efforts of the county's climate team. You'll be hard-pressed to find a more dedicated and hard-working group of people. Likewise, for the consultant team from AECOM and Inspire Green, we have worked closely with them throughout the development of the Climate Action Plan, and they brought in needed expertise to model and analyze climate hazards and climate reductions and to assess the equity implications of actions. The county and technical consultant team stayed focused on getting the job done amidst the global pandemic. I also want to thank the members of the council for your steadfast support for climate action and resilience. And almost equally important as the words on the pages of this plan are the relationships, partnerships, and community dialogue that the plan has inspired. I want to thank all the members of our community who have been involved in the climate planning process. So due to the time constraints, we will give an abbreviated presentation, but the full slides are in your packet. To start with the overview of the draft Climate Action Plan, the CAP is Montgomery County's strategic plan to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2035 and reduce climate-related risks. It identifies the county's largest and growing climate hazards, and it includes 87 prioritized actions for greenhouse gas reduction and climate risk reduction. The climate planning process was spurred by the County Council's Emergency Climate Mobilization Resolution, which set the goals to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2035 from year 2005 baseline levels. The plan reflects our fundamental values as a community, and its development was guided by these principles. And these principles will continue to guide us in the implementation of the plan. I want to highlight the second bullet point listed here, which was to advance racial equity and social justice. And this is a central pillar of the plan due to the historic and continuing racial inequities in our country and the disproportionate impacts that people of color and low-income communities face by climate change. Engaging residents, businesses, and community organizations was key in developing the plan. We had 176 volunteer members of our community who served on technical climate work groups. They met about 30 times and developed close to 900 recommendations for consideration in the plan. We also hosted 2 racial equity and social justice workshops with 30 community groups. And our 5 resilience ambassadors conducted 130 community organizations. Organizations from the public, private, and nonprofit sectors participated in the climate planning process, and the draft Climate Action Plan reflects their input.
Although all county residents will feel the impacts of climate change, certain groups will feel these impacts more acutely, and the CAP focuses in on this, quote, climate gap, in which certain segments of the population, such as people of color and low-income communities, are disproportionately affected by climate hazards and have the least resources and less ability to anticipate, cope with, and recover from them. So there are a number of maps in the CAP that highlights this, and the recommendations seek to address these vulnerabilities. On the left, our consultant AECOM spatially maps CDC's Social Vulnerability Index to highlight areas in the county where we'd anticipate residents are more susceptible to the detrimental impacts of climate change. The map on the right shows the energy burden in the county. Red shaded areas indicate census tracts where the average energy costs are 3% or greater of a household's income. This is a real concern. If we're having increased number of high heat days and folks have a high energy burden, there's going to be that wrenching choice between running the air conditioner or dealing with the intense heat to save money. And on the heating side, we know that heating oil is more costly and dirtier than electric heating. Colleagues in the Department of Health and Human Services who manage the African American Health Program have told us that they've heard concerns on the part of some elderly Black residents in some communities who are on fixed incomes about this very issue. The solution is converting to cleaner and more affordable heating to enhance health inequity. Of course, that then raises the issue of upfront costs associated with making that conversion. And we try to capture these types of issues in the equity enhancing measures for many actions throughout the CAP. And here's an example: electrification code requirements for existing residential buildings. I don't know if you can see it, but under co-benefits, there's a very negative score for racial equity and social justice because the costs associated with electrification conversions could impact the availability or price of affordable housing, and the cost could be passed on to renters. So we flagged this in the shaded box, suggesting prospective measures to ensure that we're not exacerbating inequities, and we do so at a very high level. So some of the bullets that read: provide subsidies to low-income households to make the conversion, develop awareness campaign in multiple languages, focus on accessing financial incentives. The bottom line is we tried to convey throughout the CAP the need for integrated solutions that address climate change, equity, health, and the pressing quality of life issues. It's really about systemic change.
The Climate Action Plan also includes a section focused on climate hazards and climate vulnerability. The plan identifies the county's 4 largest and growing climate hazards: extreme heat, extreme precipitation, high winds, and drought. These hazards negatively impact all of the underpinnings of our local economy and quality of life, including our health, natural resources, agriculture, infrastructure, and physical assets, and water supply. Due to time constraints, I won't go into each of these climate hazards, but I'll just share one example of how we've layered on through using different mapping tools to get a better understanding of the localized hotspots that we can anticipate from climate change. So this map shows what we can expect in the projected 10-year precipitation event in the year 2050. With the red dots representing frequently flooded roads. These are roads that are already in the year 2021 already frequently flood. The areas in the map that are shaded in the darker blue are areas that have the highest expected increases in nuisance or regular flooding. And then we combine this information with the social vulnerability index, showing the areas of the county that are considered to be the more vulnerable half of the county's population. Combining the climate hazard data, the asset information, and the social vulnerability index helps us to identify priority action areas of the county. To reduce the risks and the impacts associated with the county's primary climate hazards, the plan identifies 20 climate adaptation actions, including repairing and upgrading stormwater drainage and management systems, enhancing temperature and stormwater monitoring alerts, updating green streetscape and green infrastructure standards, hardening emergency shelters and installing resiliency hubs, and updating floodplain maps.
The other major function of the CAP is to identify how the county can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And to do that, we start with our greenhouse gas inventory. Those who have followed this subject are very familiar with this chart. Our major sources of greenhouse gas emissions are buildings, both residential and commercial, and transportation. They account for over 90% of the emissions in the county that we measure through our inventory. The next slide shows the challenge before us. It identifies 3 main sectors that we have to reduce emissions. The blue sector is the electricity grid. We have to decarbonize the electricity grid. And the major strategies to do that focus on community choice energy, which would allow the county to become the energy supplier for residences and small businesses in the county, and hopefully offer a cleaner source of electricity than is currently provided by utilities. And the other strategy under the decarbonizing the grid, is expanding the use of solar. The orange sector there represents transportation, and there are 2 major strategies in the transportation sector. One is passenger mode shift, get more people onto public transit or micromobility options like walking and biking. And the other is to electrify vehicles that are being used, whether they're county buses or people's individual vehicles, and to make sure that those electric vehicles are charged with clean electricity. And the final major sector there is buildings, again, both commercial and residential buildings, both new and existing buildings. And strategies around buildings for existing buildings are energy performance standards, which would require buildings to meet a certain performance standard over time, encouraging electrification or requiring electrification of buildings. And on the new construction side, it's establishing building codes that drive new buildings toward net zero. That is generating as much electricity or much energy as they use on site. There's a wedge at the bottom of this chart that we haven't addressed in great detail in the plan, and that's things like aviation emissions, some industrial emissions, refrigerants, and we still need to come up with some strategies to attack those particular sources of emissions. Our greenhouse gas inventory doesn't cover several large sources of emissions. They're what's known as scope 3 emissions. These are consumption emissions from the things that we buy and use, the food we eat. Everything that's produced has some form of greenhouse gas emissions, and this often occurs outside the county, so it may be something that's manufactured in a factory in California or China, and there are emissions associated with that that we're responsible for because we use those products. And then embodied carbon emissions are the emissions in the materials that go into our buildings. So in the manufacture of concrete or steel, that creates greenhouse gas emissions as well. The plan does start to talk about these emissions and come up with some ways we might be able to measure and reduce those emissions, which are large. A recent study for C40 cities which is a consortium of cities around the world that are really diving into attacking climate change, noted that these emissions may be as high, if not higher, for relatively wealthier counties like Montgomery County. There are 6 carbon sequestration actions mentioned in the plan. These are nature-based actions focused on retaining and expanding forests, wetlands, and grasslands, increasing carbon retention in soils, and improving agricultural practices so that our ag-reserve becomes even a larger carbon sink than it currently is. And for each action in the plan, we looked at both the primary benefits, that is the greenhouse gas emissions reductions and climate risk reduction, but also co-benefits, things like public health, environmental stewardship, economic prosperity, and racial equity and social justice. Many of these actions have these co-benefits, so something that reduces emissions might also reduce improve air quality, for example. So we wanted people to be able to look at the actions and evaluate them against these co-benefits as well. We also looked at feasibility. Does the county have the authority to implement the action, or do we need some assistance from the states or the federal government or from another entity? Community choice energy is a prime example of this. The county is currently not enabled to do that, and there is a bill in the General Assembly right now which would give us the authority to implement community choice energy. And finally, we looked at investment, qualitative assessment of investment. We didn't do a detailed analysis of each action. That's beyond the scope of this document. But we looked at the investment that's required by both the county and by the private sector. Obviously, actions that are very expensive are more difficult to implement. So go ahead, Adriana.
So the Climate Action Plan estimates the emissions reduction impact of the actions. And there are 8 actions in the plan that are identified as having a high greenhouse gas reduction impact, and those 8 actions are listed here. Of those 8, the county is already actively focused on the first 3 noted here. So the first being community choice energy program, supporting the state bill to get the enabling legislation for that. The second one is the energy performance standard for existing commercial multifamily buildings. That is a bill that DEP is currently drafting. And the third one is net zero energy building code for new construction. That is an effort that the Department of Permitting Services is taking the lead on. I do want to point out that the other 5 actions in the plan that have a high greenhouse gas reduction impact, they're all listed here, and they're all related to the building sector. So this just points out the actions that we really need to be paying focused attention on. Those are, these are really the big bites out of the apple, knowing that we need to take all bites out of this apple.
The CAP includes 16 actions related to governance. This includes organizational structure and culture, staffing, technical capacity, as well as processes, internal policies, and decision-making that will help institutionalize climate change considerations and provide the foundation and capacity to implement the CAP. Recently, for example, departments identified, quote, climate ambassadors to help green their day-to-day operations and align department programming with the goals of the CAP. We've also started to embed climate considerations into the FY22 budgeting process and hope to ramp up in subsequent years. Another key lever is procurement. The plan recommends establishing an environmentally preferable purchasing policy and incorporating green specifications into RFPs. The CAP recommends establishing climate impact statements similar to the fiscal impact statement and racial equity impact statements. And critically, it calls for identifying new climate-focused positions and reorienting existing positions to be climate relevant. And this would include incorporating climate competencies into job descriptions. The success of the CAP is based largely on the degree to which community members are actively engaging and participating. And some of the key recommendations include the development of climate communication coalition to coordinate messaging, not just internally among departments, but with networks and organizations in the community at large. You need to join forces with other counties and municipalities across the state to influence climate and energy policy in Annapolis, such as a 100% renewable portfolio standard. State policies, as you know, are critical to meeting our goals, and other states are actually doing this successfully. And we convened a meeting a few months ago with some other jurisdictions in Maryland to discuss this very sort of coalition, and there was definitely some interest. Other recommendations include climate-themed public art installations, further integrating climate change into MCPS curricula, and climate-related professional development for teachers. The most significant recommendations in this section revolve around reorienting the way we conduct outreach and engagement. We recognize it can't just be a one-way flow of information from county government to the community, and to create that resonance and spark broad-scale action and truly support community members most vulnerable to the impact from climate change, we need to co-create engagement efforts so that we're working with community-based organizations to amplify underrepresented voices, to better understand the set of issues, cultivate community-driven civic leadership and solutions, and build capacity by creating organizational architecture to sustain the work. We're currently thinking through the concepts of a climate justice academy with fellows or ambassadors who are compensated. This will take some time to think through and require some significant resources, but we really feel we need to move in this direction.
The Climate Action Plan also includes other sections listed here. The plan has a robust list of actions that individuals, homeowners, renters, and businesses can take to reduce emissions and increase resilience. The plan also references the proposed new general plan, Thrive Montgomery 2050. The timing of the general plan update, which overlaps with the drafting of the Climate Action Plan, enables these two major planning efforts to coordinate with and complement each other. The CAP also references the county's zero waste planning and initiatives, as well as those remaining emission sources that Stan talked about earlier. Implementing many actions in the Climate Action Plan will require substantial financial resources. And we need to be upfront and honest and recognize that county government resources alone are not sufficient to fully implement the CAP. Implementing the CAP actions calls for commitment from both the public and private sectors while leveraging state and federal government resources. Further, the county will need to creatively pursue actions that provide multiple benefits in light of constrained resources. Finally, I want to underscore that while the costs of implementing the Climate Action Plan are high, the cost of inaction on climate change will be even higher, substantially higher. While the Climate Action Plan is being finalized, the county is taking immediate action, including advocating for a state bill on community choice energy, adopting green building codes, developing the Building Energy Performance Standard Bill. We recently launched the Flash bus service on US 29, and are expanding transportation demand management efforts countywide, as well as electrifying our public sector vehicles. Approximately 1/3 of the plan's actions related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions are already underway or in development. However, implementing many CAP actions will require additional studies and analysis, developing new policies and programs, funding, staff support, and innovative financing, and tough conversations and political support and cooperation at the local, state, and federal levels. CAP actions may need to change as implementation begins, and new actions may be required over time. Our approach needs to remain flexible, and we must be willing to experiment with new approaches and learn quickly from our successes and failures, because we recognize that the state of knowledge and technologies in this issue area continues to evolve, and so our strategies must be able to evolve along with them. There are a number of ways that the community can provide feedback on the draft Climate Action Plan. On our climate homepage, which is listed here, there is a brief survey available in 7 languages. Residents can let us know what their thoughts on the plan. We're also taking comments and feedback through our climate inbox listed here. We have the Climate Action Plan art contest going on as well, and the winners will be featured on the final Climate Action Plan. We also have launched the virtual information room, and you can see a screenshot of that here on the right side. And that is intended to be a more interactive opportunity for members of the community to get to know what's in the plan. The public comment period is open through the end of this month, February 28th. In terms of what's next, the county staff will be reviewing the public comments received. We'll be starting right on that on March 1st. And we anticipate releasing the final Climate Action Plan in the spring. At the same time that we issue the final Climate Action Plan, we will release the fiscal year 22 Climate Work Plan. The Climate Work Plan will include a list of the CAP actions that the county plans to focus on during the upcoming year. We also anticipate in the fall releasing the Sustainable Economic Development Report, which will complement and dovetail with the Climate Action Plan. The report will identify recommendations focused on the county's transition to a carbon-free, resilient, and equitable local economy. And listed here at the bottom of this slide are 3 pieces of upcoming legislation regulations that are coming to council very shortly. The first being the Building Energy Performance Standards legislation. followed by the 2018 International Green Construction Codes. Those are executive regulations, as well as the Transportation Demand Management executive regulations. In conclusion, the Climate Action Plan will help guide us in tackling the climate emergency head on. At the same time, we recognize that the plan is just the beginning of the work. It is a springboard for climate action in the months and years ahead. Because the climate emergency is a challenge that no one in the world has solved yet, we must move forward with both tenacity and flexibility to implement the actions identified in the plan. Getting Montgomery County to equitably achieve a zero emissions future will take all of us working together. This concludes our presentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Ms. Hochberg. We really appreciate it. And Mr. Edwards, everybody involved. I was muted, but I wanted to welcome Dr. Stoddard. It's so nice to see you at a T&E hearing. I know you get sick of seeing me 4 other days a week, so it's good to have you here and all your input as well. And great to have Ms. Brecker from DOT. Thank you, and Director Ortiz and Ms. Shaw and everybody else whose thumbnail, and Mr. Weisberger, everybody whose thumbnail I can see, as well as everybody else. This is a great presentation. We're very excited about all the progress you're making. Let me see what comments and questions my colleagues have. Before I forget, is it true what you said? We procure at least $1 billion a year. Are there no climate-related considerations? And if not, what does the Director of Procurement think about this?
Are you referring to whether the procurement process includes green specifications or not?
Yes.
I could start with that, Adrian. I'll defer to you on the other part. I believe there are green cleaning specifications for green seal cleaning materials, and there's some other things, but we don't
not
have
climate related then.
That's correct, and we don't have a comprehensive suite of environmentally preferable
Health related. Have you talked to the procurement director? I mean, I'm jumping ahead from my list of questions, but have you talked to the procurement director at all about how he feels about that, and how does the county executive feel as well?
Yes, so the Director of Procurement is very supportive and on board, and we have started working with the University of Maryland graduate student program to start scoping out what such green specifications related to climate might look like in the county.
Great. Are there jurisdictions that do a great job of greening their procurement process? Doug?
Yeah, Portland and San Francisco come to mind. They're really ahead of most of the other jurisdictions.
I've never heard of those places. Okay.
I know.
Okay. And colleagues? Councilmember Reamer.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a particularly interesting moment in our discussion about climate. We'll be voting tomorrow on the proposal that the three of us have strongly supported to generate community solar. It seems like this plan first of all, what I like about the plan, among its several contributions, it identifies the primacy of clean energy generation. The chart that Stan Edwards was walking through shows what an impact is needed, really, from fuel switching in the electricity grid, but also that a lot of the building layers are actually clean energy layers. They're not really building layers. I mean, they're achieved through changes in building policy, but the switch actually, the climate impact comes from reducing consumption and switching the source of energy to green, if I understood what you were saying, Stan. And then a large share of the transportation as well. The climate benefit comes from switching the fuel source. So very broadly, I think this plan ratifies, I'm not going to call it a plan, this document ratifies what national experts are saying, which is that we have to green the electricity grid so that it is powered 100% by renewable energy, clean energy. And then we have to move everything onto the electricity grid. So shut down fossil fuel vehicles or other types of, house appliance infrastructure and so on. So that's important. I think it's really important for the environmental community as a whole to kind of absorb this, and the whole county as a whole to absorb this, like the absolute primacy of clean energy and the need to shift everything onto a clean grid. And it's not very politic, but we are often, I think, a culture to believe that the small things we do all throughout the day make a difference. If I don't use a plastic bag for the leftovers and instead use a Tupperware, I'm making a difference for the climate. None of these little actions that we take have any real meaning in the grand scale of things relative to clean energy generation, generating solar and wind on a massive scale, and then shifting all of the power in our homes, in our offices, in our cars to being powered by clean energy, solar and wind. I guess the thing I wanted to focus in on a little bit is the community choice strategy, which I strongly support. It still assumes that there will be clean energy to use. And the core problem is how? Where is that clean energy going to come from?
Other states.
What's that?
Other states.
Well, exactly. But there's actually there's a limit to how much solar we can pull from other states.
I'm aware. Yeah.
As I know you are. And I think that is something that has not really kind of, seeped in, is that we actually don't have the ability to get all of our solar from Arizona or, Iowa. That we are required, I believe, really probably through the state level agreements that we have with other states in the Northeast to generate a large share of our own solar in Maryland. And so there is just no way to achieve what this report calls for without a massive scale solar deployment in Maryland. That's the first point. The state portfolio standards require 14% of all solar, I believe, to be generated through Maryland-based solar. And again, I think that must be due to negotiated agreements with other states that also want to, pull from all the solar that they can in other states. Everybody wants someone else's state to provide the solar, I think. That's, writ large, why we're stuck. But so Maryland has to provide solar here locally, at the state level. And then I think as a matter of equity at the county level, it's not actually an unachievable amount. I think the acreage is, as I recall, something like 40,000 acres across the state of solar that's needed to achieve the clean energy portfolio standard. I think that might be for 50% clean energy, but it could be for 100, I don't recall. So, another related point, Delegate Kumar Barve has observed that the cost of solar really depends a lot on rooftop versus ground mounted. And it's like, I think it's more than triple the cost to do ground mounted, to do rooftop solar. I can testify to that personally. I got a bid on rooftop solar for my house very recently. 8 panels, $7,000 I have to come up with up front. That's not a solution for a lot of people to be able to put aside $7,000 and get a payback over 10 years or maybe longer. Not a lot of people can do that. But anyway, the cost of rooftop solar is so great that as a scale solution, it's not competitive with coal and gas. So really we're dependent upon ground-mounted solar, which is actually cheaper than coal and gas. And if we could really expand terrestrial solar or ground-mounted solar, we would be able to unwind, all those fossil fuel sources in the grid. And so, I can't personally see anything more important for us to be really focused on than how we're going to generate the solar energy on the ground to meet the ambitious goals of whether it's the renewable portfolio standard or community choice. Either way, you have to generate the solar to make it happen. Naturally, I'm upset by the county executive's posture on this issue. And I won't go into it at length because I think it'll make everybody uncomfortable. But, I'll just say, to me, it feels like the biggest initiative for this executive has been opposing solar rather than actually getting anything done. So we have this report. I had hoped that it would give us a little bit more guidance about how to spend, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, to the extent that we can increase our investment at the county level. So maybe I'll just I'd ask the question to the executive team, what guidance would you find from this, as far as where the next most effective investments are? If we'll be hard pressed to find a lot of funding, I think, due substantially to the hazard pay, which has soaked up $85 million. It's going to be really hard for us to add funding to the budget this year. But if we are able to, find some additional funding, what do you think in this document, we should look to for guidance on how to expend that?
If I could first respond to the comments that Councilmember Reamer made regarding solar and the county executive's position. The county executive does support the deployment of solar countywide. We know that we need to maximize solar deployment countywide in order to help meet our goals. But solar needs to take place everywhere and not specifically only within the agricultural reserve. Within the agricultural reserve, he does support the co-siting of solar with agriculture in soil classifications 3 to 8. And also he supports the raising of solar panels 6 to 8 feet off the ground so that you can actually use the space underneath the solar panels for crop production. The county is in conversations with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, who is conducting studies of agrivoltaic throughout the country, and they're very interested in pursuing a study here in Montgomery County within the agricultural reserve to identify, given our local climate conditions, what are the impacts on crop production when solar panels are co-located up above the crops. We're also doing a number of things to support countywide solar installations. The county was recently designated by the SolSmart Foundation to gold level status in light of our solar permitting and solar inspection efforts. And we're continuing to look at ways that we can ensure that our permitting efforts support solar installation in the county. The county also supports solar co-ops that helps bring down the cost of residential rooftop solar installation. And we're also continuing to explore the factors that contribute to the limited uptake of solar on private sector roofs and parking lots, and looking at ways to overcome these. And we also believe that we need to lead by example. And so we use our county government facilities. We already have close to 8 megawatts of solar installed there. And we have another 6 megawatt installation underway at the closed Oaks landfill facility.
Well, it's all, I think, a lengthy defense of opposing solar power for 50,000 people through using farmland. But if you could talk to us about the resources question I asked, how would you advise coming out of this? We can best target our very limited tax dollars to try to move the needle.
So the plan includes a number of different maps, charts that help to compare the actions against each other. There is a figure that prioritizes actions by greenhouse gas emission reduction impact. We also stack up the actions against each other based on the actions that have the greatest feasibility of implement, the so-called low-hanging fruit. We also compare actions against each other based on the number of co-benefits that they have to things such as racial equity and social justice and economic prosperity. So we recognize and we offer these multiple different ways to stack actions against each other, because it's not necessarily just a dollar and cents comparison, and that different people have different perspectives and different priorities in terms of what should be looked at first.
I also think from a feasibility standpoint, it's logical to build off programs that we already have. So for example, the BEPS program builds on the benchmarking program, expands benchmarking and takes that a step further to look at energy efficiency improvements. Building codes is something we work on all the time. There's a 3-year cycle of building codes. And so being more aggressive about how we might update our building codes to be more efficient, that's an effective way to expand a program that we already have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm enthusiastic about the building codes and the performance standards work. I think that's important, and we need to get that done as soon as we can. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to make some improvements there, and hope to get some drafts from you very soon. All right, well, I'll let my colleagues make some comments, and maybe I'll make some more myself.
I bet you might. Councilmember Glass.
Well, I suspect whatever comments are reserved today might be iterated tomorrow when we take this conversation up in a different manner, but nonetheless, it is, as we all know, it is all interrelated. And level setting, I appreciate all the work that you all have done, having touched base with many, if not all of you over the last at least year and a half while this work was taking place, and being with Chair Hucker when the 800 or so recommendations were unveiled nearly a year ago. Pardon me?
In the Unisphere.
In the Unisphere, when we could all get together, right? And so that does seem like ages ago for many different reasons, but glad we're finally having this conversation. But as we look towards these recommendations and doing what we have to do as a planet, as a country, as a county, I want to again level set and have a better understanding of where we are, and so that people can better understand where we need to go, including us, right? So I have a few questions just about kind of the status quo, and I don't necessarily know who will answer them. I guess I'll defer to Ms. Hochberg, and then if other people want to chime in, please do so. But in all the information that you've shared, we know we need to increase recycling goals, and as I understand it, the goal that had been set some time ago for the year 2020, and we're in the year 2021. So last year's goal, it had been set to have a 70% recycling for all waste generated here in Montgomery County. How are we doing?
Director Ortiz, please.
Yeah, although just a thumbnail, I could see Adriana looking directly at me. So it's short answer is we're falling short, Councilman Glass. According to the Maryland Recycling Act, which is a formula, and there's various factors based on education, our recycling rate is approximately 60%. But when you take out sort of credit that we get for doing educational preventive programs, that takes 5% out of that number. And then if you don't count the incinerator ash, which is another 14%, we're really in the low to mid 40s. So we're falling short. There's in an upcoming hearing with T&E, we're going to go over the 10-year solid waste plan, I believe, where we outline, some of the ambitious plans that we have to get close to 70 and surpass 70 in the next 10 years or so.
Okay. So thank you for that very honest response, that the goal for last year was 70%. We're at 60% if you take in other considerations, but the real number of recycling that is going on in terms that people can understand, garbage or waste in their home or in their places of business that is being recycled, is in the low 40s. Okay. Another goal that has been set by the county prior to me arriving here, but a really important goal, is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2027. How are we doing on that goal?
So the county started measuring our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions in 2005. That is measured every couple of years on our behalf by the Metropolitan Council of Governments for the Washington region. As of 2018, which is the most recent data point that we have, our emissions have gone down 19% in that period between 2005 and 2018.
Okay, so we've reduced 19%, and we were hoping or need to reduce to 80% in 6 years. Okay.
Exactly.
So we got a lot of work to do. We all agree on that. And we all, being who we are, know that we have to and know that we want to. And we gotta figure this out. And we have to take ourselves out of some of these comfort zones and do what the planet is demanding us to do. We have no options. And, this report, I really appreciate all the work that has gone into the report, but we need all the work and energy, if not more, going into solutions. And I'm going to be looking at all of you. I'm going to be looking at the executive, and clearly, I really appreciate working with my colleagues on the T&E committee, because we know that this work is important, and we have committed ourselves with our vote and our voice to tell people that we need to have more solar here in Montgomery County. And again, that's going to be a conversation that takes place tomorrow, and I suspect for quite some time thereafter, because if we can't lead for what we need, then we're stuck. And so we need you all to step up, and we need all of the political leadership, not only in Montgomery County, but here in the state of Maryland, to step up, because otherwise we are going to be stuck, and all of these conversations will be for naught, because we will not have a planet. And so, again, appreciate all the work, and we got to roll up our sleeves and really get this done, because the reason I asked those two questions is because we still have a lot of work to do, and those for goals that were set years ago. And for whatever goals are in this report, we're still playing catch up. So thank you all for being here, and more work to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. Well, I just wanted to observe, to follow on, what reduction we have had in our emissions has come almost entirely from switching fuel sources from coal to natural gas.
Yep.
And, I think what that shows is how important it is to focus on switching fuel. And, all of the other efforts that we undertake are just a sliver in their impact relative to shutting down coal and replacing it with cleaner energy. So that's the spirit of the whole solar initiative, is to shut down coal, ultimately shut down natural gas as well, and have everything be solar and wind. I think that's the true goal. And our state policymakers are working on ways to support the workers through that transition, who earn their livelihood from coal and gas. But the economic opportunity of clean energy is significant. I mean, the impact of building all the solar facilities and then maintaining them will create a huge number of jobs as well. So in any event, again, it has been very educational to me to understand that what progress has been made globally and locally has largely been by substituting one cleaner energy for, relatively speaking, for coal, and that is largely natural gas. And what we need to do is substitute all of it for solar and wind. The only way that's going to happen, as I was explaining earlier, is a very aggressive campaign to build solar on the ground. And would certainly, my vision of how this plan might have worked out differently would have been precisely that, to announce an aggressive campaign to build solar on the ground in Montgomery County and to generate a huge share of our energy locally, as opposed to supporting someone else's initiative, in the state. But can you explain what if we were to enact the priority actions, does that meet the 80% reduction by 2027? What can you share with us about what those priority actions would achieve?
So let's talk about building energy performance standards for a minute. We, as Adriana mentioned, we are working on a bill right now, sets long-term standards for commercial and multifamily buildings above 25,000 square feet. The impact of that measure depends on what those long-term standards are. If we set those standards very aggressively, obviously you're going to get more greenhouse gas emissions reductions, but the impact is going to be much more significant. By impact, I mean the cost both on the county government and on the private sector that has to implement those standards. So as we're going through analysis of that bill, we'll be providing some information, more detailed information about the impact of, both from a cost standpoint and a greenhouse gas standpoint, of setting emission standards at certain places for certain building types, as well as the time frame of when you might implement those standards.
And will you also can you estimate how fast, like what the timeline is of the projects to get the impact? In other words, the building sector does not change itself overnight. It is a long-term process. Like, do you have any estimates of what that timeline is like?
So that's going to vary from building to building, of course. What we're doing is, what we're proposing initially is a 12-year time frame where we set a long-term standard 12 years out. Because, as you say, buildings don't change overnight. They have cycles of capital improvements. They have regular equipment upgrades. And so what we want to do is give building owners the target that they have to meet and let them figure out what's the most effective way for them to do that in their normal cycle of replacing equipment, capital upgrades. We think that gives them the best flexibility to reasonably meet the standard.
Right.
I'll give you another example, Councilmember Reamer, about the time frame of things and the impact. Community choice energy is another example. As you pointed out, decarbonizing the electric grid is very important. So there's a state bill right now that would enable us to launch a community choice energy program. There would still be a number of steps that would be required before we can launch such a program. And then the impact of that program will depend on the cost of electricity and what percent of clean power it has in it. So Boston, for example, just launched their what they call community choice electricity program this month. And they've got about 250,000 customers in their program. We would have roughly 350,000 an hour. So that's a pretty good analogy to what we're trying to do. We're actually having a conversation with Boston in a couple of weeks to learn more about their program. But they announced their prices for their community choice energy. And they have 3 levels of electricity. One that provides the same amount of renewable power as that offered by utilities. And that's about 0.8 cents cheaper than the utilities provided. So you can save money if you get the same source of electricity or the same equivalency of renewable power as the utilities. Their current requirement is 18%. So they have a source that provides 28% renewable power. That's 10 percentage points higher than what the utilities provide. And that's about 0.3 of a cent cheaper. So you can get a cleaner source of power, save some money. To go to 100% clean energy, which is an option they provide, it's almost 3 cents per kilowatt hour more than the utility provides. So those are the kind of decisions we'll have to make.
Which is, sorry to interrupt you, but that's like, probably a 20% increase in your cost or so, something along that line.
Probably something like that, yes.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of decisions we're going to have to make is what is the right level of renewable energy we might want to offer in our aggregated mix. And I think Boston's approach is a good one where you give people choices in there. But clearly, having a community choice energy program does not necessarily make all our power 100% renewable right away. We've got some tough decisions to make, and there's some cost implications with it.
Thank you. Honestly, I hadn't understood that. I'm not an expert in how the community choice works, so that's interesting.
So electricity procurement is a complicated issue. Another thing I want to point out here is the grid is complicated, particularly as the folks in Texas have learned this week. And we're talking about electrifying everything. There are some significant challenges to electrifying everything from a grid perspective. And so we have some partners in this that are critical to this. The Public Service Commission, the General Assembly will have to pass some laws and regulations. Public Service Commission will have to implement them. The utilities will have to be able to implement that. But our grid right now is sometimes taxed. And when we talk about electrifying everything, we're talking about increasing the amount of electricity. And so these are very complicated issues, and I appreciate everyone's desire to move right away. But there's a lot of details to work out here.
Well, your point is a good one. I mean, electrification relies on not only switching the fuel source to clean, but also reducing consumption, because you really can't. If we didn't reduce consumption, there's just no way the grid would be able to support the electrification of everything. So, it's why we do have to continue the focus on all of the efficiency policies, and, the shift towards walking and biking must accompany a shift towards electrification of vehicles, because we just can't, if the status quo gets electrified, it's not going to work. We have to reduce the consumption. So all these things have to go together. I will say again, broadly speaking, I feel good for the first time in like a really long time that there actually is a way to slow down and ultimately reverse climate change. I mean, I believe in this idea of electrification. I think it will work. I believe it's possible to shut down coal plants, and that will have a massive impact on our emissions. And I believe it's possible to shut down natural gas. I know that will only be possible if we make other choices. But for the first time, I feel like, there is a credible strategy here, very broadly speaking. And that feels good, and frankly, that's why I've been so passionate about making changes, because I see a connection between a change that we make and an outcome. And sometimes that is not always the case. When we deal with climate and environment, it can be really debilitating. It can be very depressing, and you feel like nothing you're going to do is really going to make a big difference in the long run. But I personally believe in electrification as the way forward. And, everything that we can do to support it, I think will be very helpful.
One other thought I would add is that we didn't get into this situation overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration with a lot of partners and a lot of tough conversations. And we're only going to get there if we work together and find some solutions that everybody's going to have to bend a little bit. I think everybody recognizes that, but we are working. We're as interested in getting to zero as anybody. This climate team that's been working on this. I know you folks are, but we have lots of work ahead of us.
Councilmember Bremer, is that it? You all set?
Yes, trying to help taking care of a household item here.
That's a worthy goal. Okay. Mr. Torres-Cuban, we're so glad you're here to join us. I'm really personally impressed with your report and your work in other areas. other jurisdictions. Is there anything you want to jump in and add at this point, since we haven't called on you?
No, not really. I mean, it's encouraging to be a part of this conversation and see everyone, really trying to take some actions and really make a difference. So it's nice to see, to be a part of this. And
well, how do you think you're from the outside? This is your first TNE hearing, right? I know people sleep on the sidewalk all night to get a ticket to these hearings. How do you feel like we're doing? What do we need to do better? How optimistic are you about our ability to meet our goals?
I mean, it's definitely a challenge, obviously, as you guys have all been talking about here and discussing, and it's going to require some important decisions about, what that's going to look like in the future. But I do think that you guys are like on the right track for sure, and really getting into the nitty gritty of it. So, yeah.
What do you see as our biggest challenges? I'm glad to hear we're on the right track. What are our biggest challenges?
I mean, the energy solutions, I think, as we were talking about, are probably going to be, I mean, I'm focused a little bit more on like the actual, like the bad part, sort of the impacts of the climate change, more so than the energy side and like the greenhouse gas reductions. But, I'm familiar enough with all of this. Definitely the energy component of it, I think, is really going to get the biggest bang for your buck there. And as you've been discussing, looking at what options are available and how to start implementing those and bringing them into the communities. It's going to take time and effort, but I think those are definitely going to be the biggest impact things that have been identified there.
Right. No, of course, I know you know better than all of us. Most of that is outside our control, and we're having trouble implementing what is within our control in that area. Okay. Well, unless you have anything else to add, we're eager to have you back and to take your guidance on where we need to head from here.
I mean, I think, as you said, it's a conversation. It's going to continue to grow over time and continue to, obviously, I think this has already had a focus where you've been participating with the community and joining, including them in the conversation as you go along. So I think all this is really positive and moving in a good direction.
Great. Okay. Ms. Hochberg, anything to add at the end?
I just also wanted to give an opportunity to Emily McDuff or
yes,
Chansey from ACOM if there's anything that they would like to add.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a great
discussion. Managing thumbnails is a challenge. Go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. It's so helpful to hear from folks outside of our team on how the plan is being taken and what other considerations are going into the flip side, not just developing the plan, but taking it forward and implementing it. I did want to point out, this is in response to your question, Councilmember Reamer, kind of the timeline of these different actions and what needs to be prioritized. We did put together as part of the plan on pages 61 and 62, a table of what are the technological strategies that need to be implemented and what's the timeline and uptake of those. As Stan noted, it's not just participation, but it's the level of participation and uptake for different strategies. So we kind of outlined assumptions that went into projected changes in terms of emissions reduction. So that should help. Like Stan said, this isn't going to be changed overnight, but this at least gives a broad brush picture as to what needs to happen first, and additional considerations to take into factor. So appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Chansey, anything to add?
Councilman Reamer.
Well, I guess that sort of leads me to follow up a little bit on the community choice energy. I mean, Stan, there's a huge share. Maybe we could even go back to that chart about the path. I don't know, Emily, you're sharing the screen, or who is? I guess, yes. Oh, that was it. There you go. So the blue is grid decarbonization. I guess this is sort of a nuance here, but community choice energy is not going to solve that entire blue segment. Am I right in saying that?
Well, that would be the bulk of it. If we were able to offer 100% renewable energy to residential and small business customers, which is what the enabling legislation would allow us to do. There are some larger electricity customers that wouldn't be covered by that law. And then, of course, it's an opt-out program, so people could opt out and go to a different supplier if they wanted. But we're hopeful to be able to offer an attractive, clean source.
I guess to your point, it will depend on what share of the population of those 350,000 accounts we can get enrolled in 100% clean energy, right? Okay, so if you got all 350,000 accounts, then you'd solve much of that, if not, most of that. But that will be market dependent on the affordability of clean energy substantially. It'll have a big impact.
Yes.
Which gets back to my previous point about the way we make solar cheaper is by getting past rooftop and parking lot and into solar on the ground. And that's really, I now understand better, even the community choice, my takeaway here, even the community choice initiative is going to require cheap, clean energy.
Yes.
And to work. And cheap, clean energy comes from, substantially being able to put it on the ground. And
yes.
So I did a back of the envelope calculation when the ZTA was first introduced, the 1,800 acre level. I'm assuming 5 acres per megawatt. People can quibble about those numbers, but that would generate about 5% of our 2018 electricity load. Right. So if we're talking about electrifying more things,
need a lot more.
Solar in the Ag Reserve at 1,800 acres could be part of it, but we need a lot more. And so the electricity that we would procure through community choice energy would largely not be generated in Montgomery County. It would be offshore wind, for example, or wind from Western Maryland or Pennsylvania or a host of other sources.
Right. It's going to be a combination of sources, wind and solar, right? I mean, solar.
Solar, certain part of it, yes.
And then the solar part will substantially be ground-mounted solar in Maryland. I mean, we could say we're going to provide 50,000 acres of solar in Maryland, Montgomery County. I think our community would probably support that. But that's not what we proposed. We proposed 1,800 acres of solar. And to your point, it solves a fraction of the problem. It was not intended to solve the whole problem, but more just our share as best we could, in a balanced way. I think that future generations will probably question that concept of what is really a balanced approach, to be honest. Okay, well, that was helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, this is helpful to me. Councilmember Reamer, you'll have to cheer me up, but I'm glad to hear about your optimism. The Montgomery County, since you put this on the table, yes, it's a little surreal to me to be talking about the Climate Action Plan before the vote tomorrow on the most important climate bill that I've seen in years in Montgomery County, and one that I think is essential to our future and our ability to meet our goals. So anyway, I guess we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But informed by today's discussion, I think the fact that we have many residents who I believe don't want to have a burden of looking out of their homes at a solar array on someone else's property in the Ag Reserve after spending 4 years trying to pass the bill to authorize offshore wind in Annapolis, eventually successfully. They remind me of the very entitled Ocean City residents who for years did not want to see an offshore wind turbine the size of their fingernail on the horizon on a perfectly clear day, but they wanted to have their homes powered by the very energy that turbine generated. And I think our residents have to make, and our elected officials have to make the same type of choices. We've declared a crisis, and crises demand difficult decisions. I was here when we declared it, and I hope we didn't just do it because it was an election year. But I think we have way bigger problems, as this report suggests, than setting county policy based on whether a few wealthy households see what they want to see on their neighbor's property when they look out their window on a perfectly clear day. Our residents ought to realize that if you don't want solar, our energy has to come from somewhere, and your choices are oil rigs or natural gas facilities or nuclear facilities. And I haven't seen a single letter from anybody in Montgomery County asking me to cite more of those in Montgomery County. So while we have to generate more of our own electricity, if we don't want more solar, our energy has to come from somewhere. And anyone who thinks those electrons get perfectly efficiently transmitted from the Midwest to Maryland without any loss of electrons should go back to physics class, because that's not the case. Maryland is in a crisis. We generate less of our own electricity than most states, and we have some of the highest energy prices in the entire nation because of the restrictions that are out there. So, Emily, I loved your report, but I was surprised to see the letter from the county exec at the top of your report, since I know this is all new to you, but you probably weren't involved when the county exec took the funding for your consultancy out of the budget, and this committee restored it. And then our decision was upheld by the full council. So it would have been good to have a letter from the full council, since that's what initiated this whole process. But anyway, the experience that Councilmember Reamer raised has been a real education to me in many different ways. I've heard lots about everyone's commitment to our climate crisis, and especially the value of locally serving agriculture. I'm heartened to hear about everyone's commitments. Ms. Hochberg, I'm wondering if the county exec would support a bill to say that the ag reserve should be used for the most important solutions to our climate crisis. And in my mind, I believe the science would show that those are either solar panels or forestry or locally serving agriculture. If we restricted every acre in the ag reserve to be locally serving ag or forestry or solar panels, would the county exec support that?
He supports solar in the ag reserve. He supports agriculture in the ag reserve. He supports trees in the ag reserve. So I don't think there's a question about that. And he has.
Oh, he should support my new bill then. Okay. I'm not sure he supports solar in the ag reserve. I think he supports rooftop solar in the ag reserve, but not community solar in the ag reserve. But anyway, we can talk more about that tomorrow. Anyway, this is very helpful to me, and I'm sure my colleagues. And we're grateful for all your hard work on this. As you know, and I know I've communicated, certainly a supermajority of the council is very over our heads dealing with the COVID pandemic, and as is Dr. Stoddard, and the recovery. So I think it's going to be a while before we deal with a lot of these bills, probably after the budget. But we're really eager grateful for all your hard work, eager to get your best thinking going forward. But I really want our policies to be consistent and not sort of politically driven. So I hope that all the things we'll see in the future reflect that sense of urgency. So anybody else? All right. Thank you all so much again. Really appreciate all your hard work on this.
Thank you very much.
Bus riders